What's happening, guys? This is Adi again, Gate 7 International. This is the Andre Horta deep dive number two, take two, I should say. Sorry, some technical issues made the first one unlistenable, so we're going to try this again. And as always, before we get started, don't forget to like and subscribe to the show. Help us continue to grow the red and white community. There are so many more people out there, and we have to bring them into the family so that we can make this the biggest European football community for Greek football and for the rest of the clubs in Europe as well. You can support us on Patreon as well. Patreon members get early access to the scouting reports if you're in the expanded content tier. And then for just $1 a month, you can join the WhatsApp group, get early access to some data, and get information that we don't normally share publicly. You can get all of that chaos, all of that fun just for $1 a month. So check us out and support us on Patreon. Without further ado, we're here to talk about the latest acquisition, a signing that came in alongside Chiquinho, our other midfielder. This is Andre Felipe Luz Horta, and this is our newest number 8, our newest midfielder, 27 years old, right-footed center midfielder, 5'9" sitting at 174 centimeters for the metrics, guys. Very lean, very small, 67 kilogram, 147 pounds. So he's actually even lighter than Chiquinho is. And like I said before, Andre Horta is our second new midfielder who is coming on loan from Braga with a buyout option of 4.5 million euros. So, along with Chiquinho, this is another player with a weird relationship to Benfica, or especially early in his career. After he spent some time in Benfica's academy, he swapped to the Academy Setúbal, which is under the club Vitória Setúbal. And eventually, he would sign for their first team in the summer of 2014. Then in the summer of 2016, he'll get purchased back by Benfica for 400,000 euros. A year later, gets loaned to Braga, has a solid season, gets sold to the MLS for LAFC for almost 6 million euros. He'll spend only a season in LA before he gets purchased by Braga for 2.5 million euros. And a few years later, he's here at Olympiacos on loan with a buyout. Now, like Chiquinho, Horta can play in different areas of the pitch. He can be a deeper lying defensive mid, a center mid, which is usually the case, a left sided mid, a right sided mid, or even an attacking mid. His profile is that also of a very technical ball carrier. But unlike Chiquinho, who displays more flair, he's Horta's more straightforward. He takes a lot of quick touches, keeps the ball very close, quick turns, plays the ball between his feet, and he can separate himself from the player just to get spaces to pass the ball. That's usually the context for his dribble success. His profile is also more important to possession than Chiquinho is. I'll discuss the context of that later on throughout the rest of the scouting report. But one thing's for sure, both of these midfielders um, do have some pretty incredible technical qualities. Now, as we get started and we take a look at the data here, this is the percentile data. And for those of you that are tuning in for maybe your first scouting report, the data is based off of percentile metrics. So we take average performance data per 90 minutes for various aspects you can see here, and we compare it to everybody else of the same position in the league to see kind of where he stacks up. The goal creation data is at the very bottom of the chart, and you can see it's pretty good. And I don't like to do comparisons at this stage of the scouting report, but since we signed Chiquinho at the same time, and he's a similar value proposition, I just want to mention that Horta's goal threat is way more evident than Chiquinho. And as far as goal scoring, he can be a threat from multiple areas of the final third. He had a couple of goals from flicks following some set pieces. In open play, his goals usually resulted from these 1-2 pass combinations with a teammate. If he had a defender in front of him, he would pass the ball to a teammate who would then one touch into the penalty area. And he would get separation for the defender, get the shot off, and score. Usually occurred on the left side of the goal from his perspective, of course. And as far as shot opportunities go outside of the goals that he had, it was almost an insufferable amount of long shots. And by this, I mean long shots outside of the penalty area that were almost never on target. If he's able to get played through in open play, it's almost always dangerous. But if he's taking a shot from distance, it's usually a waste of time. And I could see that annoying a lot of fans this season, especially if he starts doing that, kind of similar in the way it happens with Madi. He's well above average in terms of his assist volume or even expected assists. And part of this has to do with the fact that he's a set piece specialist. So a number of his assists, a large number, came from corner kicks and free kicks. In open play, the large majority of his assists come in a very particular context. Usually when he's in stride coming down the left side of the field, and either when he just crosses into the left side of the penalty area or gets further to the end line, he always passes it close to the top of the penalty area. Usually, he plays the ball in between the penalty area and the penalty spot, and if defenders are cheating too close to the goalkeeper, it leaves so much space for his teammate to rip a shot, and they have plenty of space to get it on goal. Great angle, hard for the goalkeeper to get to, especially if the goalkeeper is in the center of the goal and his player is taking a shot at a corner. So there was a couple of assists also from lovely smart passes that were cutting through the defensive line for a teammate that was running on and then, cross here and there. Outside of assists, opportunity creation generally came from set pieces. I've seen people on social media describe this guy as a 10. And while I do see a lot of movement from him and even a preference to be in those elevated attacking positions, I I don't see him as a 10. I don't see enough in open play for me to say that this guy's a 10. Outside of the occasional run into the penalty areas, like I mentioned before, I'm not seeing a huge source of long-term shot creation from this guy outside of set pieces, of course. Looking at his build up and possession, I mean, this is where, similar to Chiquinho, this is where his value is, not goal contribution. Although he's competent for a deeper lying midfielder in goal contribution, he has tremendous build-up characteristics. Even though his role was reduced this season and he doesn't play starters minutes, he has continued to display impressive characteristics in possession. Even if we go back further than this year, we see a player that can be a true engine of possession. He sees an incredible volume of touches. He was the top player in pass attempts per 90 minutes among midfielders, as well as the top player in terms of progressive carry volume. For a team like Braga, that is very competitive, but of course not the most dominant in the league, especially in possession. It just speaks volumes that he boasts the top stats in Portugal when it comes to creating meaningful movement forward with the ball for his team. Chiquinho's data in this regard was solid, but Horta's even better. And it's this season versus Chiquinho's data was for last season because he didn't have enough really for us to get a good sample for the season. There was no context where I did not see success from Horta. I mean, he always knew where his teammates were, even when he got closed down by opponents. He was incredibly difficult to dispossess, adapts well to games, and combines with almost every player on the pitch. I also noticed that when the formation would adjust or transition, it was usually as a result of his movements. I find it meaningful that a coach trusted him with the tactical shifts, and he also seems to be pretty vocal on the field. So maybe we have ourselves an on field leader here. Pass accuracy under 90%. Considering the volume of ball movement attributed to him, it's remarkable. He's not just a short pass guy either because he takes risks, making this feat even more remarkable. This season, he came on primarily as a sub, and it was noticeable when he hit the pitch. If Braga felt disjointed in play, he seemed to make them click. Vital in progressing the ball forward, out of the defending third, into the final third, and even getting it into the penalty area. I have to admit, guys, I haven't felt like this watching a player in possession since we did the scouting report for Huang Baum with Patrick Kasky. The build-up characteristics here are incredible. Better yet, he's played very well in a 4-3-3, a 4-2-3-1, a 4-4-2, and he's got experience playing in a back three as well. Well, in a formation that utilizes a back three. The only risk with this player, like I mentioned earlier, was that he has thrived in environments where his players are doing a lot of movement around him. Given how stagnant our movement has been, especially in the middle of the park, I worry. I worry that we'll see a reduction in output, at least in the short term. However, whereas I was concerned with Chiquinho, Horta, I believe, possesses a quality that would still seem to be quite useful versus whether a guy like Chiquinho could falter. Lastly, the defensive traits. For both Chiquinho and Horta, the Greek media have brought up aspects of a 6 as well as an 8, and I gotta be honest with you guys, I don't see any attributes of a 6 at all. He's definitely more of an 8, and in that offense is just more of his thing. But he is positionally astute, keeping to a defensive line. And in fact, as I mentioned in the offensive transitions, it is him in the defensive transition that appears to be the reason the shape changes. So make of that what you will, but it's just a pattern I noticed that the shape seemed to adjust with his movement. And I don't think it's a coincidence that it's happening both offensive and defensive. So it's significant for those same reasons. He is aggressive closing players down, just like Chiquinho, but I don't see an ability to anticipate opponent possessions and break them up. Not like Santiago Eze. He is vocal, does great work defensively. I just don't see him in that manner. There's no qualities maybe outside of him being pretty aggressive of being a 6. It's just not there. So like I brought up with Chiquinho, maybe these aspects on the defensive side of the ball will complement Heze, as he's not a natural 6 either, but he has different attributes that make him valuable in the defensive end, protecting the phase before the defensive line. That could be the case. I do worry though that without a proper 6, our midfield will continue to be exposed. Our hope with whether it's Horta or Chiquinho is that somebody complements Eze and they will play well off of each other. It's it is weird though that we have a Portuguese coach and we haven't found a proper 6 yet. He's a Horta's another one that's really not good in the air, so and not because of a lack of effort or positioning, he's just short. So not likely to be much help for us on set pieces. Lastly, we're gonna move to the comparison to Madi, and just like I did for Chiquinho, I chose Madi as the point of comparison here. While Chiquinho's data and Madi's were close, the discrepancy between Horta and wider. And because both of these guys have been brought in to kind of replace creativity that we will lose when Madi goes this summer because he's not signing a renewal, or at least hasn't showed he would. It we're gonna use the same comparison. Now, while the value proposition is slightly different, Horta is an improvement in various aspects. Madi, despite having less ball control than Horta, is a very confident 1v1 dribbler. Not to say Horta cannot dribble, as I told you, before he's competent in making space for himself. Madi is better 1v1 in terms of deliberate take-ons. He's not afraid to run at players at all. Madi's also better defensively when it comes to reading opponents' offenses and possessions. While Horta, like Chiquinho, is aggressive behind the ball, Horta is better positionally. Neither player really showed me in any tape I watched that they were capable of anticipating anything or really being a key disruptor in defensive transition. Madi's not only positionally astute, but he runs all over the place and he's pretty good. He's pretty good at anticipating movement and breaking up opponents' possessions. This is evident also with his higher level of interceptions that you can see in the chart. The remarkable thing with Horta, though, is that his distribution is just on another planet compared to Madi, and he's in a top league. This is remarkable. It's about as clear of an upgrade as it gets on paper. I've always rated Madi's ability, even though he has not been with us this whole season, if you get my meaning. But Horta is just a more polished player. He just feels more polished overall in terms of touch, in terms of how he releases the ball, collects the ball overall. And with our current restrictions, financially at least, and even the way the club has viewed status wise in Europe, this is about as close to a quality replacement for Madi as we're going to be able to find. Now, this is the time we get to my verdict. We took everything, all the data. You've seen everything. Now, with everything I've watched, everything we've learned, where do I stand on this player? And in these deep dives, there's a lot of risks. A lot of these players we look at, there's a lot of risks and concerns that weigh on me when it comes to the verdict. Plenty of players have qualities, but their game can be so uneven. It's a huge risk. And then there's players, a lot of which we've signed this season, that we don't know if they're match fit or not. They haven't played. So that's an even bigger risk. This one, though, the risk is small. I mentioned this before regarding my concerns with Olympiacos and its stagnant movement, but I'm going to be bold here. I haven't felt this good about a signing coming in since Swangenbaum and Rodine. Those guys look great in the tape, and you just knew they were going to do something here. This guy has talent, and if he fails, it'll be the biggest surprise to me. I just can't see how he does not become an important piece for us. As far as business is concerned, it's the best bit of business we've done in the winter. Sure, he's a loanee, but his buyout's manageable, and if he has the impact that I believe he will, there's no chance in hell we don't renew him, especially if we end up in Europe after all. I hope you guys enjoyed the deep dive. We still have center backs to worry about, maybe one, two other signings before the window's over. So watch this space to get the best analysis available in the Greek football world, whether it's in Greece or outside. I'm Adi. This is Gate 7 International. By the fans, for the fans. And we'll see you next.